Module 3, so some presentation basics. When we're communicating, we want to make sure what we're showing in front of people is as professional as it can get and shares the message clear so everybody can see it, they can read it, they can understand it, and they're not overwhelmed with the information. What kind of software presentation options are out there? The biggest one you're going to see most of the time is PowerPoint. So why do we use PowerPoint? It's easy to use. Lots of file types are supported because it's compatible with Microsoft Office. It allows sound integration. It now even allows video integration. If you're watching me here today, I did the recording in PowerPoint itself, and it's got me over in the corner, all good to go. There's lots of community support because it's been a long-standing product. You can look at forums, you can Google things and learn how to do it. Super easy to use, super easy that way. There are mobile app options, so if you're on the go, somebody can follow through on your PowerPoint slides. Cons, it's not as easy to collaborate with as something like a Google tool, so Google Slides, where I can have a shared file and we can actually all be working on it at the same time. Web app has limited features versus something like Google where you can constantly be on the web doing it. And perception is that it is less creative, I think, because it's more the traditional standalone product. But does PowerPoint do the job? Absolutely. I mean, like I said, we're using it here today. It also integrates very well with things like Google Slides, so you can share it, and most of the features of what you've created will be working there. So it does have some transition between one and the other. What other options exist? There are things such as Keynote that you can go out there and use. So if you're looking to kind of step it up a notch or looking to do things differently, there are other options out there. This is more of an Apple product, so iCloud allows you to have it on multiple devices. There's a lot more customization. In general, Mac products are usually more on the creative side of the equation, so you're going to see more design features in something like Keynotes. But there are fewer help files, and it's only available to Mac, so it's a more limited product. And if your clientele or people you're going to be working with are not all using Macs, it's probably not the best option simply for those kinds of reasons. Google Slides. So we talked about Google Slides and PowerPoint kind of working well together. It's very easy to use. It's intuitive. There's lots of user files for help because of the fact that it's a Google product and it's simply out there and many people can use it. It's a low-cost option. Easy for collaboration, as I said, because it is a web-based thing where we can actually be working on the slide at the same time, doing things, seeing the changes, having that file in our Google Drive. So there's no question about what the most current file is. It's the one that's there because we've all worked on it, whoever's working on it at the time. It's innovative. It has things like a Q&A feature if you want to add to it, allowing the audience to interact through a link. So it's putting you right through to those things directly through it. Again, a lot because Google has all these other things within their suite which are going to integrate it with it. Similar to how Microsoft has theirs, Google has theirs. Different products. Microsoft, when you're looking at things such as PowerPoint, is more standalone. Google doesn't have all the effects and features, so depending on what you're trying to do, some things just simply may be better using something like PowerPoint, but Google works very well for many of the basic things. I use it on a daily basis. One con of it is you do need to have a Google account, but if you're using the Google Suite, you probably already have that. Slidebean, something different, a little less mainstream, but it has recreated things such as pitch decks and more creative formats for starting your project. So interesting if you're not quite sure how you want to present something, it can give you some better ideas. Themed templates, there's a chat feature. It will kind of help curate your colors so you know what you're doing, but there is no animation feature. So depending on what you're trying to do or how you're trying to feature it out, you kind of have to go with what suits your situation best. And then there's things such as Beautiful AI, which uses artificial intelligence to kind of design the slides in the way that's going to best suit what you're trying to do. Very interesting if you have a skill set where you kind of want to learn things that's a little bit different. However, customization possibilities are limited with this option. You can export to PDF or PowerPoint, but there isn't a presenter view and speaker notes like the other one, so it may not be as user-friendly for you.
Okay, so now we're going to look at a software that you're probably going to use most of the time, which would be PowerPoint. And we're going to talk about some features that you can use with PowerPoint. There will be a separate set of slides that you'll be able to go through after this. It's going to walk you through what this looks like in PowerPoint, but I do have some screenshots here as well to help us along the way. So how do we create our own kind of branding within PowerPoint? How do we show that we're related to whatever our business is or what we're doing, or customize it to the project? Because that's something that you're probably going to want to do. Well, there are certain things you can adjust. You can adjust your fonts, you can adjust your colors, effects and options within the template. You can also create your own background so it can relate to the company or the project or other things, and it can have the effects on it that you think are important to your project. So how do we create our theme or background? One of the things we can do is we can just adjust a single slide, and we would do that through formatting the background. So make sure you're in normal view on your PowerPoint, and then you're going to go to the slide master and right click the slide space and format the background. Again, we will walk through this on a slide so you can see what happen. If you want to create your own theme and background for multiple slides or for your whole deck, you can do that by going to this slide selected at the slide master view, so you can see it up here. And then you're going to navigate to what's called the slide master. So that is really kind of the background slide that all of your other slides are being created from. You're going to open the background style drop down, and then that's where you're going to be able to choose and format your style of your background you want to use, and that will help you adjust it for your entire slide deck so that that pattern follows through. What elements should you add to your template? Well, slide dimensions, things that make it so that you have some different contrast within it. Your slide margins, where are you going to have the text or the files fall within? The color palette, what message are you trying to send? I'm a person that when I usually create a slide deck, a lot of the times I use blues and purples because I find they're calming in nature, and that is what I usually direct towards. In this case, we're using something that's very black and white, easy to see, easy contrast, right? You want to have that kind of high contrast effect because it's going to be easier for your audience to read the slides. Think about the fonts that you want to use, and that'll help you keep the font consistent so you're not worried about going back and forth and checking and make sure you're using the same one. Effects, how are your slides moving from one to the other? How is the text coming when it goes on the slide? Bullet point features. Again, consistency is key when you're doing a PowerPoint. So if we can build those features into our template, we're not having to worry about how it looks as we go through. Same with paragraph spacing, footer formatting when we're adding things there, and the transitions. If we create them as elements of our template, then it's going to be consistent as we go through. Creating and saving these PowerPoint templates. So you're going to open up a blank PowerPoint file, you're going to format it to meet your needs, and then you just simply have to save it as a .potx. And now that's going to pop up and be a template for you. Making changes to the template. So how do you change an existing presentation template? If you go to that design tab again, there's a more feature arrow up and down, and you can change the theme within your slides. Again, all these features we're going to go through in kind of a separate deck where I'm going to show you the PowerPoint itself and how we're going through separate of these files. Slide layouts. You can change the slide layout by going to Home, Slides, and Layout, and you can find lots of different layouts for free on the web if there's something in particular you're looking at. How do you want to present your information? Maybe there's something that's just in those general templates you don't like. Take a look at different things, take a look at different themes that you see out there. What suits your message the best? Maybe it's just you're always doing some kind of update, and there's a regular slide that you could use all the time that's going to meet your needs. Buttons and backup slides. So we may have information someone wants as backup. A lot of the times you can inundate people with information on your slides, and then they're reading the information on their slides and they're not paying attention to what you're saying. And what you're saying should really be more important than what's on the slides. The slides are just helping to support it. So keep the text on the slides simple, but if somebody asks you, hey, where did that come from? You can direct them to something that is in the backup. A lot of the times I will also add a button to the slide that would allow me to go to that backup if they ask the question. I actually talked to an industry partner of mine, and I said, how often does somebody actually ask you to go back to that information? And his response to me, this is not a fact put in stone, but in his experience, about 2% of the time. So most of the time, people are not going to ask for that information. You've got it there. They can go back on their own time, but put the key information, the high level message, what the audience wants to know within the slides, and then oftentimes keep that micro data that might come up from a person once in a while in the background that you can pull up and show that you're ready to go. And how do we insert these buttons? Well, we can go insert links and action, and that will allow us to put a button in that would link us to another slide. Again, we will go back to this, so don't be stressed out that I'm not showing you these functions right here. We will do that on the slide, and you'll be able to go back through at any time and watch that. Fonts. So there's 3 basic font categories that you can think about when you're creating your slides. You can do serif, and it has ends and tails, so think Times New Roman. You can do sans serif, which is the Arial or the Calibri or those kinds of things, something similar to what we're using today. Or we're going to use script, and that's something that tries to emulate handwriting. It probably shouldn't be used in most cases because it's much more difficult to read on the screen. In most cases right now, you're going to see people are going to use sans serif fonts. What size should those fonts be? General rule of thumb and good practice would be to keep your titles at a 32 or 40 font on a slide, and then your body at a 24 or 32. Do we need to sometimes move that just slightly to get the information on our slide? Yes. But if you're having to really cut down the size of your font in order to meet the needs of the information, maybe we need to separate it into a few slides so that we can better read those slides. And then font effects. What are we going to do to show our message correctly or effectively? Bold. So it's not always easy to differentiate bold when you've got it on a slide. So make sure that if you're using it sparingly. Maybe it's the highlighted points of the title or something. But if you're flipping back and forth between bold and unbolded, for some people that's very difficult to read and it's hard to see the difference between the two. So it may not effectively show your message. Underlining. So we use this with hyperlinks because that's what happens typically with a hyperlink. For other factors, it may not be effective because of that. So we can use that sparingly or not as necessary as maybe using bolding. Italics, if we're going to be on slides, it's difficult to read. All caps, what does that mean? We're shouting at someone. So we're going to avoid doing that as much as possible. So what are we going to do? What is our best way to show our message when we're trying to show something's more important than other things, or really kind of emphasize a point? We can highlight it. This is probably the most effective way in a presentation to show the word or the meaning of what you're trying to do. Fonts. As I said earlier on the other slide, let's work at using high contrast. So when you're looking at your slides, do the words really stand out? On this slide, we have that dark charcoal gray, almost black background with the white font. You can clearly see the letters. You could use it the other way, and you could have a light colored background with dark font. Whatever you're doing though, try and keep it so that the color of the font and the color of the background make it easy to read. You could have people in a very large room reading this, and we want to make sure at the back of the room they can still see what's going on. Also, consider the meaning of your colors. Okay, certain colors portray certain meanings. In this, we're not going to necessarily go through all of the color theory, but if you ever want to think about color theory and how that impacts your audience, especially if you know who your audience is and the kind of message you're trying to bring, think about those things. Again, as I said before, I like to use blues and purples because they are calming colors. I would generally not use a red in my background for a slide. Something else that's really difficult to see and which I would recommend not using would be like a red and orange combination or a red and yellow combination. It's just difficult on the eyes and difficult for the viewer to kind of experience. And how do we set ourselves apart? So I like Miro.com. I will walk you in Miro.com when we get to the other slides. It is an online tool. It's free to use, and you can create things like storyboards or images with your messaging in them that'll help to portray it in a clearer way, maybe a more eye-catching way. It's one of those things that's going to help you set yourself apart from the competition or set yourself apart from other employees at work when you're showing your boss something or a partner in the community, whatever it happens to be. And I just find it just makes things easier when we can visualize them and just add that to your deck. Simple as a cut and paste. We can go through that no problem, so you can watch that in a future video. Bullet points. So should we use bullet points on your slide? You'll notice many of my slides here really don't have a lot of bullet points. Do they add value is the question. How about bullet points? How do we know when we should use them on a slide, how they should look? When are they appropriate? Where do we put them? So it's important to know that when you're trying to portray maybe a list of things, bullet points are a common way to do this. But we got to think about the following. First of all, the bullet point character. We want them to be simple and easy to see and not something that's detracting from the presentation. So if we have something where people are trying to squint because it's a character or something that they're trying to grasp what it is, they're losing the point of what the words are on the slide or what you as the presenter are saying. So we want to keep it simple, much like we have here with the dots. The size, slightly smaller than the font. Again, we're focusing on the words and the presenter, not on the bullet point. And the spacing, do it in a way that we can tell that these are different ideas. So make sure there's consistent spacing between them. And it's not like a paragraph of font where we're trying to guess where one starts and stops and the next one starts. So a bullet is not a sentence. It is simply a concise point. Try and observe the 6x6 rule. So try not to have more than 6 lines of text with 6 words on the slide. It helps, again, to keep it concise. Use a consistent style, ideally a verb, and capitalize each point the same way. So you can see here, bullet character, bullet size, bullet spacing, all written the same way in the same font. So you can tell those are my 3 different points on my slide with a few words after them describing what I'm talking about. What about adding multimedia? So you want to take that presentation the next step. Maybe you want to show people a video of something that you've put together. Insert video, online video, and you can link something in from a place like YouTube. We can also add images into our slides from things like the snipping tool. Or if you want to add the image and have it in a way where we can maybe access the file down the road, you can go insert file as an image, insert object from file. Again, I'm going to take you through these things on another set of videos, so don't worry about the fact that there's just a few simple instructions here. We'll walk through it and you can go back and see the tutorials there. Also, make sure that your presentation is accessible. We live in a very diverse world and we want to make sure that our presentation is easy and viewable and understandable for the entire audience. So consider all these factors when you're doing it. And then go back through and do something as simple as going File, check Issues, and check for accessibility, and it will help you see what things you can change in your presentation to make it easier for the viewer. And Amanda, you say, how do we record our presentations? How do we add that narration like you have today? It's really simple, and PowerPoint has actually taken it up a notch in the most recent version. So if you go Slideshow Record, you can use your microphone, even as simple as your iPhone headphones, the one built into your computer, or a secondary one if that's what you prefer. And you can go to a quiet area without distraction and record your narration. Right now, it also has a feature that you can record in your video, just like I did today. And the great thing that I like about recording in PowerPoint is I don't have to use another software. It's all right here. If I make a mistake on one slide and I want to go back and fix it, I can do that. And I can also fix the text on that slide because they're 2 separate parts. It's really easy, user-friendly, and I would recommend if you're looking for a simple software to be able to do these things, PowerPoint in and of itself is the way to go. Also, remember to cite your work in a presentation. Just like anywhere else, if it's not our work, we should be citing it. You can use in-cite text references as well as works cited page at the end if needed. And just think of it just as any other works cited. You can use MLA, you can use APA, whatever you're comfortable with. Just make sure you're doing that. Because again, if the work isn't yours, we should be crediting the person whose work it is. And that's it. We hit the end of Module 3 and we're at your exit ticket again. Here's what I'd like you to do with this module. I want you to go into Miro.com. I want you to create a new board, find a template called Restorative 4Ls, and I want you to fill it out based on your experience in this module. Use the snipping tool and paste it into a presentation. And boom, we have used the skills we've gained today between this video and the little tutorials you can watch as a side. Just like that, we're on to Module 4, Dashboards and Updates. You're going to spend a lot of time when you're working giving people quick updates on what's going on. So understanding how to present it in an effective way and communicate in an effective way is really important. And I have learned through my career, this dashboard format is something that I use time and time again. So what are dashboards? There's really 3 key points I want to get across to you here. It's a way to take complex data and summarize it, usually in a visual format on 1 or 2 sheets max. It's a data consolidation. So what does the information say? We're going to use charts or trends or images like we talked about with Miro.com to show what's going on, and we're going to work towards our key performance indicators. So usually there's targets you're going to have within your department, within your company. You as an individual, even on your performance evaluation, will have KPIs, and we're going to show on these graphs in these images of the dashboard where we are in relation to those KPIs. And it's just really simple, quick at a glance, easy for people to understand what is going on with the business, the health of the business, the health of an organization, and how we're getting towards where we plan to be. Here's an example of a dashboard for you. We've got some targets identified, some numbers that we need to meet, and then where we are in comparison. And are we good, so we're in the green, or are we red and there's a problem? And what there would normally be is also a box on here that would probably explain really quickly, high level, the whys of where we are and what we need from other people to get where we need to go. So really simple, few images, few words, and then you're going to explain it in your presentation, which is probably just an update to your boss or whomever the information is for. What are KPIs? I talked about it on the other slide a little bit as we entered into the topic of dashboards, but really KPIs are important metrics or business indicators. They are things that you're going to work towards to show that you're making your progress towards the goal. In a lot of my courses, I talk about scope and the scope of the project. Well, how do we know we're getting towards the scope of the project and finishing what we need to do? We have these key performance indicators that show we are meeting the requirements, that we're moving forward. Or if we're not, it's a really highlighting point of there's something wrong here, we need to get there. All right, so some considerations when we're putting our dashboards together. First of all, who is our audience? Are they internal to the company? Are they external? Is it our direct boss or supervisor of the project who's very close to what's going on and wants to understand those micro details? Or is it an executive team who wants more of a macro or larger picture? And what KPIs you choose to present to them is really going to be reflected in that. Think of it like this. When you work for a company, usually you're going to have some kind of organizational strategy or structure. And that is where usually the KPIs for the organization come from that go down at the different levels. So each department is going to take the KPIs assigned from the strategy of the company and split them down to meet their own needs. And then from there, down to your manager, and eventually down to you as the employee on what is going to be expected of you in the year. So what KPIs are we looking at? And don't have too many, because if we're working towards 10 different things, it's very difficult to see what is on track and what is just kind of a number there that we can show another pattern of. So make them important and make them directly related to the audience you're reporting to. When you're physically talking about how the dashboard looks, think about size and position. So what is the important messaging you want to get across? Make sure that's clearly presented and probably closer to the center of the screen. And if there's some details that aren't necessarily important to the entire audience, those are things that are probably going to be closer to the exterior or maybe the bottom of the slide in a smaller font that's not as important, so that we can show people what they need to focus on and what the messages we're trying to share on the slide. Having a mix of indicators is also important. So show different ways of showing the information. Are we showing progress based on a timeline? So are we on track in terms of time? Are we showing progress in terms of completion of things? Those are two very different points, because I can be completed 60% of the stuff, but I'm 90% through my time. So how are we showing the information and what does that tell us about the project? Make sure that the KPIs help the audience know what's going on with your project. And be prepared to adjust as you go along, because sometimes things don't go as planned and we need to change what the goal is. Maybe larger because things are going well, maybe smaller, change our time frame. We've got to be flexible. But understanding these KPIs and understanding the goals and why they are what they are helps us make those adjustments. And then last but not least, remember how when we talked about putting our PowerPoints together, we talked about putting stuff in the background or putting stuff in detail? Well, know those details because somebody might ask you the question on them, but they don't necessarily need to be the forefront of your slides. That can be in the backup for if the question is asked. And the last thing I want to share with you here in Module 4 is a project status report. So it's very similar to a dashboard, a little bit less visual in nature, but you've got these high-level categories that help people understand what's going on. Makes it really easy to understand what the next steps are and if we need help from other people. So you would have the project and you would make it a very clear title. So supply chain project, not going to cut it because there might be 10 supply chain projects going on. We need to put something specific like supply chain project for increased capacity in cell 3. Okay, and then the status. Again, when I talked about earlier, there being multiple factors to status. Are we on time? Are we meeting the quality of where we needed to be? And are we on budget? Because we could be on time, but be way over budget, or be way over budget, but we're ahead of time, so that's okay. Having these three pieces together gives us a really high level indicator of what our tracking is. And they don't even need to necessarily say on time or on quality or on budget. It could be a color scale, which we know has an indicator. So we could have a red, green, yellow, depending on where we are. And by seeing it quickly, somebody can flip through and go, oh, this project is good. We don't need to worry about it right now. Oh, I see a yellow. Let's take a look and see what's going on. Or, oh, I see a red. Maybe we need to call a meeting. And then when they look at that, why are those things the way they are? A few quick bullet points on the progress of what's going on what's happening next, what's caused the issue, if there is an issue, or if we see something coming up that could be an issue, and anything else that's maybe really important for everybody to know. But it's a quick one-pager, something that somebody can flip through and know the status of a bunch of different things going on within an organization. We want to keep things concise and easy. When you know how to fill out these things and you have specific categories, it makes it much easier to do your job. And with that, we are done module 4 and we're hitting another exit ticket. Here's what I want you to do here. I want you to think about a project you're working on or come up with an example. This doesn't have to be something big. It can be something as simple as, reorganizing a room in your house. What are the metrics for the project? How can you make sure that your success of that project, how can you quantify the success and what is the best representation of that? What kind of chart or image might you use to make this effective messaging? And that's it.